From Army Green to the homeless scene, Mr. Ross is living the American dream. You gotta feel good about being a part of this remarkable story. How do you feel?
I feel great. I feel honored. Over a period of 18 months, I watched Mr. Ross grow in all areas of his life. He worked in an active recovery program. He built a career. He achieved financial success, purchased a home, and now he's actively engaging in his community.
Telemon's mission map represents 5 components, right? The 5 components are well-being and personal success, a long-term career path, improved financial well-being, permanent housing, and community membership. So when we think about Mr. Ross's story, how many of those key components did Mr. Ross achieve?
Mr. Ross achieved every component. He touched every area of our mission map while his journey with us.
Telemon's mission statement is to disrupt the cycle of poverty by empowering families to overcome barriers to success. What would you say that some of Mr. Ross's barriers were?
It had been more than 20 years since Mr. Ross had had a drink. He spent several months battling his addiction and depression before finally checking into the VA. After completing the recovery program, he was transferred to one of our local partners, the Martinsburg VA Medical Center. There, he was enrolled in the Goals program, gaining occupational and life skills. There, Mr. Ross was able to continue his recovery while addressing his physical and mental health barriers. This is where Mr. Ross completes the first core component of the Telamon mission map by achieving well-being and personal success.
So that's the key. He has to start there, right? That's the starting point. So take me back to when Mr. Ross enters the Telamon Victory House. What is Victory House? Can you give us a brief overview of what Victory House is?
Victory House is a transitional housing facility for homeless veterans. When Mr. Ross entered Victory House, he had just successfully completed the Goals program, and this is also where Mr. Ross and I began the real work. Mr. Ross was determined. He came to me on the first day and said, "My health and sobriety, I want a secure employment, I want financial stability, and I want to buy a house." I was thinking to myself, well, okay, that's a tall list, but let's see what we can do.
I remember reviewing Mr. Ross's story with you a few weeks ago, and you made a comment that while you were reading back through your notes, something stuck out to you. What was that?
The word aggressively pursue was everywhere in my notes with Mr. Ross. After a few weeks of being in the program, Mr. Ross came to me one day and he said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't do this the rest of my life." And I was shocked and confused, and I said, "What's going on, Mr. Ross?" And he said, "I can't work in a warehouse the rest of my life." He had always worked for the government. I said, "Okay, looks like we need to do your resume." So we sat down, worked on his resume, and started completing applications. After a short time, he received a phone call from the company that he was contracted through. Not only did they offer him employment, that they wanted to offer him an advanced position. I remember while he was completing the onboarding, he came to me one day and he said, "I need to know how to use Excel." It was so ironic because I just attended an Excel course offered through Telamon. So we sat down and we made our own Excel class. Every day, Mr. Ross would come into the office and we would have Excel classes. We would go through the program, learn how to use the tools and the resources. Mr. Ross was like a sponge. No matter what I threw his way, he continually absorbed. I would say that this is where Mr. Ross achieved the second component of the Telamon mission map by achieving a long-term career path.
So let's fast forward a little bit. His physical and mental well-being has improved. He now doesn't just have a job, he has a career that he continues to advance in. Did you connect him with any other Telamon resources?
You have to remember that during this entire time, Mr. Ross had been working with the Telamon Certified Housing Counselor. His credit was continually improving. His savings were increasing each month. He was taking all the classes and doing all the work. That's where Mr. Ross completed the third component of the mission map by achieving improved financial well-being.
He's on a roll. And he comes to you, and he has all these certifications that he's gained over the last year with your support behind him. I believe he got a forklift certification. He got an Excel certification. He attended Telemon's Money Matters financial literacy workshop. He attended the homebuyer education workshop. What was left?
Finally, the day arrived, and Mr. Ross came in and he said, "It's time." And I said, "It's time for what?" He said, "It's time for the house. I'm ready. It's time." So he went back to the credit counselor. She ran his numbers and determined that his credit had increased over 100 points. And in fact, it was time. So Mr. Ross started looking for a house. The certified housing counselor provided Mr. Ross with a referral for the homeowners assistance program. There, he was able to get $14,000 in assistance with closing costs, and he was approved. Yes, you guessed it. Mr. Ross achieved the fourth and fifth component of the Telamon mission map. Mr. Ross obtained permanent housing and community membership.
Community membership. What did it mean to Mr. Ross to have that home? Was home ownership always a goal of his?
I think home ownership had to be a goal of his. Mr. Ross did an amazing job with his son. It meant the world to Mr. Ross to be able to match the success of his sons.
And I know that he kind of lost connection. So once he finally exited our program, I met with him last week, and I think he told me that he was able to save over $10,000 before purchasing his new home. I remember the joy on his face when he told me that he was able to purchase new living room furniture for his new home. But I think he said that he had some special guests visit him recently. Who was that?
When he had came to Victory House, his son had gotten married or was due to be married during the course of time that he was at Victory House. And since his son was in Germany and he was at Victory House, he was unable to attend the wedding. But they had planned for the son and his new daughter-in-law to join him for a visit to the States when Mr. Ross completed the program. So for Mr. Ross to complete the program and have that home, to have his son, his daughter-in-law, and his new grandbaby to come visit, that was instrumental in his success.
I remember asking Mr. Ross to take a look back for me, right? What do you think that he could have done different, or what do you think are some highlights that he may take forward to share with his sons?
I think humility is what Mr. Ross brings forward and can share with his sons. Mr. Ross, while he was going through his addiction, it was a secret. No one knew. His sons had never known that part of him. He had been in recovery their entire life. His relapse taught him that he was human. But Mr. Ross also finds ways to still participate in Victory House. We speak about Mr. Ross at every house meeting. Every time I go there, there's veterans who are new to the program, and you hear the chatter of Mr. Ross's name. He is the success story of Victory House. Mr. Ross came into Victory House. He utilized every resource that we would provide him with, and he took that resource and he made an achievement out of it. Other veterans that come through Victory House can see that it truly is possible to go from homelessness to home ownership if they work the components of Telemon's programs.
Sabrina, can you take a look at this picture and tell me what this picture represents to you?
The picture represents closure. Mr. Ross was one of the last veterans that I worked with at Victory House. And having the privilege to walk him across that line, it let me know that the years that I have put into that program, they really did matter. They really did change lives. And I think if all of our participants looked at Telamon as a life-changing opportunity, they would see what we can do for them. They can see how it can truly improve their life.
You changed Mr. Ross's life, Sabrina. You changed it.
Mr. Ross changed my life. I was a single mother when I was there at Victory House, and I was raising 2 teenage boys, and I had no clue as to what I was doing. Any time that I would hit a bump in the road with them, I knew that I could go to Mr. Ross. I could go to any of the guys in the house. Those guys allowed me not to be a single mother anymore. You know, my kids didn't have one father. My kids had 10 fathers that, you know, would lean on them when they got out of line. So they changed my life. The program changed my life as well.
She was able to help me further my career, and I still do that to this day.